What is a dirty business tactic that you know of and that everyone should be aware of? Story 1. The scams involving you won a TV, you won $5,000, or you won a bass boat at car dealerships are pretty common. Typically, you receive a flyer in the mail prompting you to scratch off X to see if you won. Invariably, you'll win the grandest prize, but on reading the fine print, you realize it's merely a ticket to spin a wheel or enter a drawing. Oddly enough, the employees' friends and family are the ones who genuinely receive the boat or TV or cash. Your quote-unquote win serves solely as a ploy to lure you into the dealership. A mischievous move is to play with the manager's time, head to the dealership clutching the prize flyer, seek out a splendid car, one decked out with all the options, inquire about every dealer add-on they offer, emphasizing your readiness to purchase without even negotiating. Engage the manager repeatedly, demand a test drive accompanied by the manager, persuade them of your serious intent to buy leading up to the paperwork phase, then just before signing reveal that they haven't actually sold you a car but rather the concept of buying one. Secure the manager's card mentioning your plan to include it among other dealership manager cards. Explain that a random selection will determine the dealership manager to be notified via mail within 4 to 6 weeks. Highlight that the purchased car might not align with the one featured in your promotion. Well, isn't that dirty? I'm not about to waste my time, though, on their shady gimmicks. Story 2. When I worked in sales, they drilled into us the psychological tactics to sell whatever product we had on hand. Buckle up, this might take a bit. To start, everything revolved around what they termed impulse selling. This approach hinges on exploiting people's inclination to decide based on their current emotional state. Salespeople pump up your impulse and then execute the close. The close marks the moment they seal the deal, convincing you to part with your money for whatever they've convinced you that you absolutely need. There are 5 core methods salespeople use to stir up that impulse, encapsulated into the acronym they taught us, GIFTS or GIFTS. First in line was greed. Human nature veers towards greediness. People crave more value for their money, always seeking a good deal. If they perceive they can gain or save money, they're far more inclined to make a purchase. For instance, classic tactics like half price or buy X, get Y free deals play on this instinct. I stands for indifference. People can sniff out desperation. When they detect that you have an agenda, like wanting them to buy something, they become cautious and seek reasons. Hence, a savvy salesman aims to appear indifferent to whether or not you make a purchase, even if they're on commission. They strive to convey that the fantastic deal they're offering is solely for your benefit. They have nothing to gain. Next up is fear of loss. It involves instilling a worry that missing out is a real possibility if one doesn't buy now. This tactic capitalizes on creating a sense that it's a once-in-a-lifetime chance to snag an item at a reduced rate. Or it can be combined with greed, like buy in the next 60 minutes and receive X free. Now moving on to the Joneses theory, if your community embraces an idea, it implies you should too. It's a safety net. It's the trend. Everyone's jumping on board. Don't be left out. This tactic also intertwines with the fear of loss. Lastly, there's sense of urgency. It can be wielded similarly to fear of loss, such as buy in the next 60 minutes or miss out on X. Or as subtle as a salesman stating that they have other appointments and won't be available to offer this deal for an extended period. A sense of urgency triggers more impulsive buying, especially when coupled with a fear of missing out. Once salespeople have whipped up enough impulse, they proceed to close the deal. I also learned various techniques for this closing phase. First up is the assumptive close. This essentially involves assuming that the person will make the purchase and proceed to fill out the paperwork. An example of this is a salesman simply requesting your name and then smoothly transitioning into completing an entire form, concluding with a request for your signature. This tactic is often supported by the trial close. Here, a salesman gradually nudges you toward making the purchase while simultaneously gauging your level of impulse to buy. They achieve this by asking closed questions and directing the conversation down a path that leads you to a sale. You might notice this technique in action with charity workers who might ask, "Do you like dolphins?" Duh, yes. Do you believe dolphin habitats should be protected? Yes again. How much do you typically spend on beer, tea, or coffee in a week? Let's say $5 or $50. Do you think you could allocate X amount to help save the dolphins? Well, I suppose you have a point, right? Another potent closing technique is the alternative close. where salespeople present you with two choices, both leading to a sale. For instance, they might ask, would you prefer the regular option or the sleek deluxe? This approach is often presented assumptively, similar to the assumptive close. Now, the final one is the silent close. It's trickier to execute but effective with hesitant buyers or those who retreat under pressure. It involves showcasing overwhelming positives alongside easily addressable negatives, then relinquishing control of the conversation to the buyer, compelling them to affirm with a yes or no. Naturally, the salesperson has presented the information in a way that makes it quite foolish to say no. After building anticipation and enthusiasm for the product, they allow you to arrive at the decision on your own. Almost every individual selling goods or services has been trained in these techniques, and the most successful salespeople have this knowledge at the forefront of their minds during sales pitches. Remember, these individuals are primarily after your money and often don't truly care about what you gain from the transaction. Story 3. Possibly not deceitful, but incompetent contractors tend to significantly underbid jobs. So if you collect several quotes and find that most bids are close in range except for one exceptionally lower bid, chances are nearly 100% that the individual offering the remarkably lower bid will mess it up, leaving you in a nightmarish situation. Sometimes what you receive is a reflection of what you do actually pay for. Additionally, it's worth noting that a high bid might indicate that they're not interested in taking on the job. For those wondering why someone would bid high instead of declining the job outright, it's typically seen as unprofessional to outright ignore bidding for a job. It leaves a negative impression on customers when you don't even provide them with the price. Reasons for avoiding a job might include insufficient workforce to staff it. Aspects of the job make it undesirable to tackle. For instance, rectifying poorly installed air conditioning could mean dealing with a project spanning months, possibly never reaching a satisfactory resolution and risking blame from the customer rather than the original contractor. Not an appealing prospect. And dealing with a difficult or unreasonable customer. While they might have non-antagonistic friends, it's best to avoid the hassle of working directly for them without causing offense. At times, these contractors might resort to theft or incomplete work, accepting payment and disappearing. They rely on the victim being either financially incapable or too passive to pursue legal action. Story 4. They offered my wife a promotion only to place her back on probation, allowing them to dismiss her without cause or repercussion. This just happened recently. They twisted some information to paint her in a negative light, leading to her termination. Being on probation in her new role left her with no legal recourse. She mentioned they'd done the same to someone else within the past year. A person who had won Employee of the Year got promoted and then immediately fired. To others who face similar situations, remember that success becomes the sweetest revenge. Prove these individuals wrong by proving yourself right. She had a phone interview this afternoon, her first one since this incident, and they asked her to come in for a follow-up in person. We're not out of the woods yet, but it is progress. I won't delve into more details about her field of work, but anything legal we might pursue would likely not work in our favor. Moreover, it could potentially harm her prospects for other positions within the county or state. Such is life. That's pretty messed up, man. It's no wonder why people are always talking about corporate greed. Now, if you're already pissed about what happened here, wait till you hear story 8. Some corporate creep invaded the girl's privacy in that story. Story 5. There's an insane markup for quick, shoddy quality. I used to work there for 6 years, but not anymore, so forget it. When you're getting a substantial job done at Kinko's or FedEx office and you don't need it immediately within a few days to a week, don't rush and demand, I need this done now ASAP. Doing so means it's produced in-house and you'll pay an exorbitant price. Instead, inquire about a bid. If the bid exceeds $250, reject it. They'll drop the price by 10% following the 10-to-win strategy to secure your business. For bids surpassing $750, firmly refuse. Request direct contact with their national bid center. Expect a call within 24 hours and watch the price drop significantly. I've witnessed a $5,000 order slashed to $750. Afterward, they either handle your order through their CPC, Central Production Center, or reach out to another local company for the task. Regardless, the quality will be far superior to their subpar Canon machines that frequently malfunction. Lastly, never print from their computers. If you need something small and quick, at least have your files on a USB stick or in your email attachments to utilize their unreliable cloud service. Otherwise, you're looking at a minimum of 99 cents per color page plus additional charges for computer time, compared to approximately 50 cents per color page without computer charges. Even better, forge a connection with an employee to discover the local company they outsource work to. Check their website, request a quote, and be astounded as your price drops by a whopping 50%. It's a 100% markup when outsourced. I forget to mention that the employee you befriend should be at least an LPC, a lead project coordinator. Look for the one behind the printing counter who might seem distant until someone else assists you. Since you're a friend in LA, you can't skip the process of befriending an LPC and head straight to complete printing. Story 6. People often get deceived about salary, starting pay, and raises. It's important to assert yourself. For a multi-million-dollar company, an extra 10 to 20 grand is a drop in the bucket. At my workplace, raises were capped at 3%. Before an annual review, I discovered my boss had misled me about my starting salary. He claimed a $60,000 budget for the role, but the previous person in the job was paid $75,000 instead. When I received an offer from a competitor that was more than double my current pay, knowing they couldn't afford to lose me given the workload, I discreetly handed my boss the offer letter during the review. They matched the offer, handed me a $10,000 upfront bonus, and even included a percentage of a business line. The meeting was incredibly uncomfortable and it was a tough move, but it was just business. Story 7. We encountered a situation where false claims were made about another house offer with zero contingencies. As young first-time homebuyers, we found a house we truly loved, though it was at the higher end of our price range. We engaged in negotiations with the seller's agent. While considering their counteroffer, our agent called to relay that the seller's agent had received an offer from someone with no contingencies, prepared to pay in cash and sign on the spot. Realizing we couldn't compete under those circumstances, our agent urged us to rush to her office and sign their counteroffer in the hope that it would be accepted given that our offer was a first. They did accept even though there was no actual other offer on the table. Later, as we shared our experience with family and friends, we discovered that the seller's agency often resorts to this tactic. Looking back, we wish we had been in a better position to challenge their methods, but we were buying in an area with limited good homes within our price range. 2 years down the line, we're content with our home, just not our mortgage. Now that's corporate gaslighting, bro. They prey on your insecurities and pressure you into making a hasty decision. If these stories about corporate baloney got you riled up, leave a like and share your own story in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to watch more videos like this one too. It really helps me out. Story 8. When I was in the process of moving to my current residence, I transferred the title of my old home and land to my sister, who was buying it and moving in after I left. Shortly afterwards, she started receiving all the typical welcome to the neighborhood coupons and flyers, despite not changing her address. It seems like companies track the title changes through the Register of Deeds. However, the most concerning was a pest control company that claimed to have an existing account on the property and recommended she continue using their services. They provided specific dates and changes, even mentioning termites. But here's a catch. All the dates referenced were while I owned the property, and I had never heard of this company before she received that letter. I'm cautious about sharing too many details, but this occurred in North Carolina. I knew the title changes are a public record, but I was surprised by how quickly companies obtain this information. Typically in my small town, it takes up to at least 2 months for updates to reflect in their online public databases. It's clear there are methods to access this information that I was previously unaware of. Story 9. There's a practice called jacking Google business pages. Essentially, if a Google business listing isn't claimed and managed by a company, a competing business can exploit this loophole. They might manipulate the listing, for instance, by altering the phone number to divert people to their own business. An article highlighted an incident involving medicine counselors in the Philadelphia area. Their listing's phone number was changed to an 800 number, redirecting callers to an inpatient rehab facility in Florida. The discovery was made when one of the counselors noticed their patients suddenly missing appointments. Upon calling one of them, they learned the patient was at the facility in Florida. Story 10. In France, it's difficult to terminate or downsize employees, leading large companies to resort to a strategic move when they need to downsize. They relocate the office to a significantly distant location from the current one. And during this transition, they reduce the office capacity from 50,000 seats to 30,000, anticipating that many employees would choose to resign rather than endure a lengthy commute of 4 hours. However, officially they claim that employees still have their jobs available if they wish to retain them, albeit with the requirement to be present in the office daily. Essentially, these employees are given the choice to either accept the new location or resign. Now, Nestle was one such company that employed this strategy, and it appears to have become quite common among multinational corporations around Paris. Story 11. I know a pest control specialist who specializes in raccoon removal. His method involves relocating raccoons from one house in a particular neighborhood to another neighborhood. Subsequently, he waits for the residents in that new neighborhood to contact him for raccoon removal services. What? That's not cool, dude. That guy was basically partners in crime with, those raccoons. Story 12. I spent some time working in Discover Card's collections department. One tactic they used, and perhaps still do, to attract customers was offering a 0% APR for their initial year. Many individuals eagerly took up this offer, transferring their entire debt onto their new Discover Card. However, the company conveniently omitted sending the first month's bill. Hidden in the fine print of the agreement was a clause stating that missing a single payment in that first year would trigger a drastic increase in APR to 29.95%. A significant portion of my calls involved these new customers who, frustrated and upset, hadn't received the bill and now faced the consequences. I had the unfortunate task of explaining to them that it was their responsibility to track their bill due dates and that sending a bill was merely a courtesy from the company. Working in that department was incredibly taxing. It felt like I was chipping away at my soul. Story 13. Debt collectors sometimes employ deceptive tactics by having individuals posing as detectives call from a number that appears to belong to a legitimate law enforcement agency when searched online. However, this caller ID is actually spoofed, utilizing a fax number from a genuine agency. These supposed detectives threaten arrest and mention local judges aiming to intimidate them. Meanwhile, the debt collector claims ignorance about the detective who left the threatening message but offers to resolve your debt. Despite being illegal, it is challenging to substantiate, which is why collectors resort to such tactics. Law enforcement or courts typically only contact individuals in cases involving theft, such as a bounced check. They don't engage in calling for an old debt as it's considered a civil matter beyond their jurisdiction. Story 14. In Nova Scotia, Canada, severance pay is calculated based on the average of your last 30 days of pay. Consequently, some companies manipulate this system by reducing an employee's hours to a minimum during their final month if they plan to lay them off. This exact scenario occurred with my wife. Despite her 5 years of dedication, consistently working over 35 hours per week, she suddenly found her shifts reduced until, boom, she received a layoff notice. This strategy affected others in a similar manner as well. Story 15. When purchasing a car from a buy here, pay here dealership, you may encounter a concerning practice. After putting down that initial $500 or $1,000 and being told you're approved, you drive the car home. However, within a couple of days, the dealership contacts you claiming they couldn't secure the financing at the agreed down payment and interest rate. They then demand an additional $2,500 down payment while doubling your interest rate. If you're unable to meet their demands, they repossess the car along with your original down payment. Now, this type of scenario is prevalent in Arizona. Additionally, a useful tip when buying any car, especially used ones, is to check if the check engine light temporarily illuminates when starting the vehicle. If it doesn't, it could indicate tampering with the dashboard to conceal a potential issue. I can't believe they're pulling this kind of stuff on people. I hope someone exposes them and gets them shut down. Story 16. The three-tiered pricing approach, particularly in contexts like roofing or basement waterproofing, operates in a specific manner. Initially, the contractor provides an exorbitantly high price quote encompassing far more services than requested. This is then followed by a more moderate quote that aligns with your desired services but includes a few additional features. Finally, the third quote matches precisely what you initially requested. This strategy aims to create an illusion of choice and lessen the impact of sticker shock. Even though the service you requested as an absolute minimum comes with a high price tag, it appears more reasonable when compared to being just half the cost of their recommended repairs. Story 17. In the high-end IT sector, it's common for vendors to adopt a strategy known as going dark in the months preceding a service contract renewal or an infrastructure refresh requirement. The intention behind this practice is to create a situation where the customer is compelled to reach out to the vendor. Alternatively, the vendor may approach the customer with minimal time to execute the required infrastructure refresh. This time constraint puts the customer in a disadvantageous position. They're either pressured to make a purchase without favorable pricing negotiations, or renew service agreements for an additional year at a higher rate while transitioning to new equipment. Story 18. Back in my elementary school days, we'd have an annual fun day with booths and games and activities galore. The kids were also roped into helping out with various small tasks. When I was around 9, my job was to sell these tiny potted geraniums for $0.25 each. Unfortunately, no one was buying them, so I came up with a bright idea. I made a new sign that read, "Buy one for $1, get 3 free." Suddenly, these little geraniums were flying off the shelves. Feeling proud of my sales strategy, I shared it with the principal. Turns out, he didn't quite approve, but he let me continue with my plan anyway. Looking back, it's surprising I didn't morph into a mini Gordon gecko. Perhaps only my bonitis kept it in check. Story 19. When you're moving out of a rental apartment or a house, be sure to snap lots of pictures and ask the owner or landlord to conduct a walkthrough with you. Film the walkthrough as well. This way, if they withhold part of your deposit, you'll have something to bring to court rather than getting caught in a he said, she said situation, which usually doesn't work in your favor. Similarly, when you return cable or internet equipment, make sure to get a comprehensive receipt showing what they received and the date of acceptance. Scan it and email it to a couple of different email accounts. Companies like Comcast and others have a tendency to lose equipment after a couple of years, then bill you for it, counting on your forgetfulness. Story 20. An older acquaintance of mine used to run a bodega where he'd place a can of cream corn on the counter next to the register. This was back when the can was priced at around 17 cents. Whenever someone made a purchase, he would add that can of cream corn to their bill. And if customers questioned the extra charge, he would casually suggest that it was their can of corn. Surprisingly, most people didn't notice, and he managed to sell that same can of cream corn maybe 20 times a day. Bro thinks he's sneaky. He basically pulled off an infinite money cheat in real life. Now, if these tales of shady business practices got you all fired up, you definitely do not want to miss People Reveal Insider Secrets the company they work for is hiding from customers. Story number 2 is so messed up. I'll see you in that one, and I want to thank you for watching this video.